Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365 on this Friday. And agricultural meteorologist Greg Soulje is here to give us a short-term forecast and a glimpse on what's going on down in South America. There's some weather to talk about down there as well. So welcome, Greg.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Nice to be with you on this last Friday, next to last day in the month of February. It's a bookkeeping thing in the weather business, but the 1st of March, 1st of June, and September and December all are the start of the various meteorological seasons. So we start springtime here on March 1st. Nothing resembling spring for now over the weekend, but we'll talk about that and signs of a pattern shift. You and I have been talking about this, and it looks like a little more active weather, moisture-laden weather pattern, and hopefully get some of this into the ground here before we go full tilt on fieldwork operations here in the weeks to come.
Very good. Well, we'll let you get at it.
All right, here we go. And off and running in the visible satellite picture. And you can see one weather system over the southeastern states. And that did generate some welcome rain, the first of several outbreaks of rain in the next 2 or 3 days for the southeastern states. One of many almost teleconnecting corridors of expanding dryness and drought. There are now some exceptionally drought-ridden areas down through the far southeastern plains. Obviously, parts of the Corn Belt, Illinois, northeastern and eastern Indiana, and Ohio. But we have some good news on that level on that front. But some cloudiness over the southeastern states. A couple of knots over sections of the Great Lakes. Those patches you see into Iowa and Illinois. That's the leftover skiff of snow that came through parts of northern and central Illinois a couple of nights ago, and the snows from about a week or so ago. So winding their way down. They're still about 4 inches on the ground from the Twin Cities down southward into parts of central Iowa, but that will be melting away on a healthy south-southwesterly wind. That circulation up there through south central Canada is low. There's actually 3 cold fronts to come on southward over the next 36 hours across the middle part of the country. So enjoy the spring warmth of the day today. And south of the Ohio tomorrow, things are going to turn dramatically on the other end of the spectrum as we welcome in the first few days of March and go right back in the other direction, as in almost the mid to late spring setup across the middle part of the country. And yes, there is moisture coming, just like we have been talking about here and on the longer range stuff on This Week in Agribusiness. The upper chart still in a dry northwest to southeast, upper air wind flow. And you can see that H down there off of Baja. That is basically the summertime hot ridge that we see in the middle part of the country beginning to manifest itself over parts of the Eastern Pacific, Baja, Western Mexico. They've had readings and will continue to have readings up between about 95 and 100. That's record flooding territory. They were 93 a couple of days ago. And to Phoenix, that's the all-time record high for the month of February. So that's some pretty hot weather. We'll see how that transitions eastward in the coming days. And you can see to the east of there downstream, the weather system bringing some wet rain and more rain in the forecast over the southeastern states down through Georgia, the Florida Panhandle, and the Carolinas currently. Otherwise, pretty quiet setup, a little snow and rain mix in the parts of the Canadian Rockies and basically almost coast to coast, except for the southeastern parts of the country. Weather is high and dry. That will feature a wind-blown day's worth of weather today. And heads up, livestock bandages, bin and barn operators on these wide swings of temperature, wide-ranging temperatures across the country, wide-ranging humidity values, and moisture coming through the plains and Corn Belt locales going forward here over the next several days. Not necessarily today. 70-degree early spring-like weather for parts of Missouri, the far southwestern Corn Belt. There again as the snow totals Fargo to the Twin Cities and southward into parts of Iowa. Some spots still about 4 inches on the ground. High temperatures for the day today, pretty broadly based into the 50s and 60s over the middle part of the country, upper 30s and 40s all the way to the Canadian border. As mentioned, 60s and low 70s from the Ozarks on southward. And so with this kind of warmth and low afternoon humidity down probably on average 15 to 25, maybe 30% over the at least drier ground areas of the plains and Corn Belt locales. Got to keep an eye on the fire risk. That red flag potential will be heightened for the day-to-day with wind, low humidity, and dried out brush and vegetation and grasses from last season. Everyone else is far west is big sky country up to 60 today, and areas from Texas on southward between 80 and 90 degree heat. I think they were down San Antonio ways at Commodity Classic. They were up and around the 90 degree mark over the past couple of days there going to and from the buildings. In any event, there's the elevated fire risk, at least as it stands for the western states and high plains areas. Then off to the east, those red areas are red flag warnings. So some of that may be as close in as parts of the far west and southwestern reaches of Chicagoland, if you will, drier grounds there into parts of Iowa and Nebraska. We had some of these fires over parts of Wisconsin and Illinois yesterday, but the winds were much lighter. The air was inverted, or at least we had an inversion, so that kind of trapped some of the pollutants and air quality. If it looked a little dingy out there on the horizon over parts of southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, that was the reason behind that. Southern states, again, up around 80, maybe 85 to 90 degree weather expected over the western Gulf Coast areas, maybe back into San Antonio and into the areas of the Rio Grande Valley. Again, these grounds that are very much dry, drought-ridden, and baked away, they heat up pretty quickly. That's usual rule of thumb when the grounds are dry, drought-ridden weather pattern over dry grounds, and they tend to heat up pretty quickly. A little more moisture in the ground. Moisture-laden grounds take their time getting warmth to work through that wet column of soil, if you will. But in any event, there were some thunderstorms into parts of south central and central Tennessee and in the northern reaches of Mississippi and Alabama. And there's the dotting of severe weather with primarily hail reports coming out of parts of northern Mississippi, Alabama, and far southern Tennessee. The warmth over the southwestern states, as mentioned, 93 degrees a couple of days ago. That was the all-time record high for the month of February in Arizona at Phoenix. And the above average temperature pattern generally continues on, although there's some indications of maybe some moisture and a cool off for the southwestern states. That will be the leading edge of what will kick systems from southwest to northeast across the plains of the Corn Belt locales going forward here over probably the next 10 days for 2 weeks for openers. But unfortunately, 50, maybe 30 to 50% of normal snowpack, not only in the mountains of Arizona, New Mexico, the southern Cascades, but parts of the Sierra as well. And some indication if we build that hot ridge where it's already playing out through the Baja reaches of California and Mexico, you tap into that already. And that, again, I think is going to be, we talked about this a couple of times, maybe a heightened and early fire season across sections of the West, considering they had a pretty abysmal moisture pattern this wintertime season. So off to the weather maps and charts. Welcome rain down through the far south end of the Cotton Belt country. More rain for Florida, a couple of thunderstorms as well. There's the first of a couple of cold fronts coming into parts of the upper Midwest, western Corn Belt locales. We'll get a little upslope condition, northeast winds up the higher terrain of Montana, the western Dakotas. So some snows will be breaking out there towards evening time. That first front knocking on the door of Rockford, Illinois to the Quad Cities, and more rain down through Florida. Then by tomorrow morning, snows will be streaking their way very quickly in an upper system behind that front out of sections of the Dakotas. The upper Midwest would be surprised here in northern Illinois. A few flakes of snow. Sprinkles of rain as the system's kind of moving into a very less than favorable setup from an atmospheric standpoint. So you can see how some of that stuff is fast moving, a narrow corridor, maybe of some small minor accumulations out of southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, southern Wisconsin, and into Michigan. And a chilly and cold northeasterly wind by afternoon makes it all the way down to the Ohio River and westward in through Kansas with showers and thunderstorms across Florida and some welcome rains in northern California. And then things begin to get a little more complex. That is a cold midwinter high over the Arrowhead of Minnesota. There's the leading edge of the cold air beginning to stall out through the southern plains areas of Oklahoma, south of the Ohio and the Tennessee Valley. And then there's an upper system beginning to take hold, and snows, some mixed freezing rain get going over the plain states. Not bad from a moisture standpoint. Again, I told you, you're not going to like the moisture necessarily going forward, but it's going to be moisture. And we'll take a look in greater detail how that plays out here, especially Sunday night into Monday, Tuesday throughout the Midwest. But in the short term, the next 24 to 48 hours, a corridor of maybe some quarter-inch moisture in one form or another for the Dakotas, Great Lakes areas, and more significant rain and moisture back into Northern California and down through Florida. Now, switching it abruptly gears here. Didn't have a time to put some of the highlights in here, but this is the story coming out of Argentina. Some decent rains across many areas, but a wide range typical of summertime like we have it here, and it tends to have, but it is in some areas they did get some significant localized short-term topsoil moisture improvement in some of the drier reaches of Argentina. So some of those crops are moving through a more critical stage of grain fill right now. We've seen some easing of dryness down there, not completely eliminating the deficits going on. Santa Fe, Entre Rios, and Corrientes had some record-setting totals in those zones, and kind of unusual for the time of year at 1 to 2 inches. So again, the wide spectrum of coverages, more so amounts. And with the rains beginning to pick up not only in Argentina, but Brazil is kind of another trip off an indicator that La Nina is completely almost winding down here thoroughly. So there may be some better maybe get in the way of harvest, but some opportunities to get some additional moisture going in through Brazil and Argentina. Temperatures, a story. Low to mid 90s. Some spots have been in the upper 90s to low 100s. So where the rains were certainly minimal, some increased stress out there. Cotton continues to move along nicely with development, bowl filling stages, but at the same time, the heat is causing stress on some of those cotton fields as well. Lastly, through Argentina, beans are in the reproductive green filling stages. Rains again have improved largely the second crop scenario, and they're still trying to get the last of it planted, but making some decent progress there. Corn has benefited for the recent rains, especially some of the earlier planted varieties prior to some of the dryness and drought getting going across parts of Argentina. If you're into sunflowers, harvest is at about 38% complete. And again, some beneficial rains in through Brazil, probably too late to matter on the first round of crops. Second crop, yes, probably so going forward, 1/10 to a half, in some spots a little more than an inch. So an easing of dryness and drought. And some of these rains did materialize in some of the worst drier areas of east, central, and northeast Brazil. Temperatures, again, in the low to mid 90s, some hot spots into the upper 90s, not unusual for the time of year. So again, mixed scenario on some of the crop conditions out there. According to the Fed's Mato Grosso do Sul, for example, reduced rainfall allowed for some field work and harvest operations to move along. And so other areas as well that had recent excessive rainfall, quickening the pace on harvest operations there. Rio Grande do Sul, soybean yield potentially remaining variable because of the uneven rains, late arriving rains, and the high temperatures, because at least high evaporative losses because of the hot temperatures there. So another mixed bag of scenarios going on through Brazil, but generally better rain. Shower activity has again eased dryness and concerns in some areas. It's a short-term improvement there for now, and some degree of preventative losses going on with some of these recent rains as well. So the mixed bag goes on, but actually more rain. That's pretty much the story. There's been more rain, still some heat, and what's been done from a crop worsening quality loss standpoint continues to play out there. Back closer to home, drought monitor from Thursday. Greg, extreme drought still Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. You can see everything's expanding over the southeastern and southern plains, the southeastern states, mid-Atlantic region, Nebraska, back into the Rockies. So we have work to do. There's a closer snapshot of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And we talked about this several times before. 15 to 16, some spots 17, 18 inches shy of what it should be soil moisture wise since going back in January of 2025. But again, there's better news ahead, and we can't make up this all at once, so we won't be able to do it all at once. We're just going to have to continue to work through it with field work in mind, and rains too going forward into the springtime season. There's a snow chart from a little over a month, maybe 6 weeks ago. That's what's left of the snowpack and snow cover, mainly in areas of Minnesota, the Arrowhead, northern Great Lakes region, and into the Northeast and New England. And some reports, by the way, as well, but domestically, as some damage to some of these maple tree operations, fruit trees as well in the parts of the Northeast and New England because of the weight of the snow. That was a heavy wet packing snow on those 50-mile-an-hour winds. So some snap and damage has been reported out there. And I think we're just weeks away from getting into the start of the maple syrup harvest, if you will. I always get emails on that I don't make mention enough of that on the TV show, but there you go here. There's the Monday through Friday outlook in the upper charts for next week. You can see those systems moving through the west into the southwest, and then a buckling jet stream pattern. That ribbon of air through Canada stays there. Systems come up out of the southern plains and the southwest up through the Ohio into the Northeast and New England, the right and correct direction to get meaningful rainfall. And there will be some snow as well for parts of the upper Midwest and northern Great Lakes region, and actually as far south as maybe Sarah Nye's place over the course of Saturday night or Sunday night into Monday. But it'll melt away quickly. In any event, you can almost see a boundary, a dividing line that lays out, as we mentioned, at the Ohio southern plains. It begins to lift north as a warm front from snow to freezing rain to sleet to rain to showers and thunderstorms. Temperatures in the 20s and 30s for the back end of the weekend. And by this time next week, we're back in the 60s and 70s as far north as maybe the I-80 corridor. And so that's the right mechanism with that southwest flow to get each and every day some incremental portion of rain and piece of rain and blob of rain. And leading off with snow will make its way across the southern plains, across the Corn Belt locales. A little overdone, but 1 to 3. Yeah, I saw some social media knuckleheads throwing 5 and 6 inches of rain out. I don't know if you maybe measure the snow in inches. That might be the right math, but generally speaking, 1 to 3, and that's a good start. We've got to get this to percolate on in, absorb on in. I'm sure there's a little bit of frost still in the deeper layers of the soil. So southeastern rains moving in through Florida, cold front, a couple of them moving from the plains across the Corn Belt locales. Again, some snow, sleet, freezing rain, and rain from the Ohio to the mid-Atlantic region moving northward with time. That will be replaced by showers and thunderstorms over the southeast, the Tennessee Valley, back to the Ohio Valley, and as far north as the Great Lakes region. That's the whole probably between Saturday and Friday outlook across the middle part of the country. Still dry through Southern California and Texas, and some of that heat in the southwestern states will continue in the Rio Grande and the desert southwest going forward over the next couple of days. Temperatures by Sunday down to only 20s and 30s versus 50s and 60s. That'll bring a shocker to the system. Then by a week from now, Thursday, Friday next week, we're back in the 40s to the Great Lakes region, 50s and 60s over the Midwest, and 60s and 70s, and warmer over the central and southern plains. Overnight readings pretty mild till we get into maybe Sunday morning. Readings down below zero in the upper Midwest, back into the teens and 20s over the upper Midwest portions of the Corn Belt and the western through southern Great Lakes region. Then we go right back in the other direction. Thaw-free cycles, and readings probably staying well above freezing in the Great Lakes areas. Pretty balmy over the central and southern plains and Corn Belt locales, as in 40s and 50s, even some 60s. At night, there's the next 6 to 10 days. It's a favorable setup for moisture, probably severe too, getting over the southeastern plains and Tennessee Valley. This is the Fed's outlook. No scribbling with that. That makes sense, as well as this maybe a little slightly too far east on the rainfall picture, but the right idea going forward over the next 2 weeks. And then the outlook for the month of March, the top two panels, that's the Fed's thinking. Warmth over the south central sections of the country, Pacific Northwest and eastern Corn Belt locales, about right, maybe a little skimpy in some of the rainfall thinking there, but the right idea. And then going forward, the 90-day outlook, that's March, April, May. That's meteorological spring. And again, the right idea, dry in the west and southwest, a little more cold air we think is going to be evident through the northern plains and Great Lakes areas. And we think that moisture pattern is more prevalent, again, basically in the Mississippi Valley, maybe as far west as about, I think that's the I-39 corridor that runs through Des Moines, Iowa, and then more so into the eastern Corn Belt locales and points on southward. So kind of the right idea, no official endorsement. March 18th is when we get together again on the live stream. There'll be lots to talk about then, and that is the weather, Sarah, here on this next to last day of February on a Friday.
A little more winter, a lot of drought relief ahead. Yeah. So then we can start easing into that springtime and getting into the fields and all of that.
Yes, as I've been telling people on the radio, you may not necessarily like the form it starts, but you know what? I'm doing the best I can here, and we want to get this going in the ground before we get into field work and planting operations. And it's going to be this juggling act going forward. And for springtime, what else is new? It's never easy around here, is it?
As you always say, don't shoot the messenger.
That's right. I'm only the weather forecaster. So support staff, whatever radio people would call that, back in the big radio days, that the sports guy and the weather guy are just, there to get the coffee. So back to you.
Just keeping you informed out there, Greg. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. And we appreciate all of you tuning in as well.